Last year, one of the most celebrated whiskeys that was an annual release was easily the Elijah Craig C923 batch, a barrel proof series. And man, that made a lot of people's top 10 whiskeys of the year in 2023. Well, we're back around to getting the C batch to hit shelves here in America again this year, 2024. And I just picked up my bottle, so today we're going to dive into it. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Ryan, and hopefully this is just as good or even better than last year's. Let's find out. So, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. If you're not familiar with this series, every year we get a few batches, and it's always, the designation is batch A, released in January the first month, 1, and then the year, 24. So today we had A124, right? And we had batch B, and now we have batch C, which is always C9 and then the year, right? Because it's batch C, it's released in September, and then the year designation. So now we have C924 right here. Boom! So I gotta admit, like, the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof series continues to be one of the best values out there, in my opinion, because, and you do want to check these things out batch by batch, because not all batches are equal, not all batches are the same. But the MSRP on this bottle is like 75 bucks, 80 bucks. I paid just under $80 for my bottle, and here's what you're getting for that price. And sometimes we like to follow this rule of $10 per year on the age, right? So if it's an 8-year whiskey, you don't want to pay too much more than 80 bucks. That's kind of where you want to fall. And that's just it's not an actual rule. It's just sort of this general suggestion in the whiskey community when it comes to sort of measuring value. There's lots of other variables when it comes to measuring value, but that's sort of one of them. Well, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, think of C923 from last year. This was almost a 14-year-old whiskey. The age statement on it is 13 years and 7 months. So over 13 and a half years old. And you were paying, 80 bucks for it. That's a really good deal, isn't it? And it's like at cask strength, barrel proof, whatever. C924, similar. We've got a nice big age statement on here of 11 years. So it's younger than C923 by, a little over 2.5 years. So it's younger. It's a little bit lower proof at 129 proof, which is still pretty friggin' hot, right? Almost 130 proof is very hot. We like to celebrate Blanton's straight from the barrel. And, I've got a bottle here. That's delicious stuff. This is straight from the barrel Heaven Hill edition with a lot more age on it. It's not single barrel though, so it's a batch. I got kind of lucky. Let me pour this real quick. We'll let it open up. Anyways, I got kind of lucky. I was on a date with my wife. It was her birthday, and we had some time to kill. We'd finished our dinner, and we had some time before the sun was going to set because we were going to go to an observatory, look through some big old friggin' telescopes, and check out, the comet, some other space, formations. Saturn was out in full force. You could see even the shadow of the rings on the planet. It was a really cool experience. But we had some time to kill before the sun was going to go down, and we were like, well, let's just swing by Total Wine, which I'm not a huge Total Wine guy, but we stopped in there, and I was looking around, and one of the workers just went walking by, and I just casually said, "You don't happen to have any C924 in the back, do you?" And he just goes, "Yeah, let me get you a bottle." And he just walked away, came back with a C924, and he had a handful of other bottles and put them out as well. I was like, okay, cool. I didn't expect that to work, but it did. And say what you want about Total Wine. I know I'm not a huge fan of some of the stuff that they do, but one thing they do really well is stuff like this, they just never really mark up, right? They just give it to you at MSRP. So it was my wife's birthday, but I got a bottle of whiskey. Pretty good deal. Let's get in here on C924 and see if it's worth picking up this year. Always a big fan of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof color. It's a beautiful color. I will say one thing I wish they would do. I think they need to rebrand the bottling. They need to rethink the bottling for their Barrel Proof series, because a lot of this stuff is really freaking good. But on a shelf, it doesn't really have any visual distinction other than really looking at the label closely to make it feel any different than just their standard small batch, which I think is not, I don't really like. So I wish there was something about the bottle that really made it stand out and be visually a little bit more distinct when compared to some of their other Elijah Craig products. First things I get just smacked with on the nose here are cinnamon and leather. And there's a really strong brownie note on the nose. Like a dark chocolate brownie. The crispy edges close to the edge of the pan. Man, there's a really thick chocolatey brownie note here. I'm really liking it. The last thing I'll note on the nose is this sort of perfumey oak quality. Well, let's get in here and try it. Cheers. Big wave of peppery oak right up front on the first sip. We'll admit, first sip of the day, coming in at 129 proof. I get hit with a big wave of peppery oak right up front. As the wave comes crashing down and starts to subside, on the back end of that wave is a really rich licorice anise note. The finish is where I get that long drawn out brownie note though, and that's hanging on for quite a while. That sip now, probably 45 seconds ago, and right now I get some gentle oak and that crusty brownie note just hanging out back there. As my palate is acclimating to this, that leather note does come alongside that back end of that oak wave. But the oak wave itself starting to get a little bit more muted now that I'm a little bit more warmed up to the high proof. Now I'm getting a lot more sweet components up front alongside that wave of peppery oak. Now I can distinguish this really thick caramely note, like caramel that's really been rendered down into a thick syrup. And it has this really thick mouthfeel to it too, very viscous in there, which I really like, especially on higher proof bourbons. And I am very much a fan of a good anise note, a good black licorice note somewhere in a sip of high proof bourbon or rye. I think that is a really nice note to have when it's complemented by other sweet things like your sweet oak sugars, your caramel notes. It gives it great balance. I'm going to say all in all, I think I prefer C923 just a little bit more, because I feel like the one thing that C923 had that this doesn't have is that fruit component, that cherry note, that dark red cherry that we would get on C923. And I did revisit this just last week, and you know, that was one of the first things that came to mind. I'm missing that here, but it's being replaced by that anise note that I didn't get on C923. So it is a bit of a different experience. And I think it just comes down to preference. Overall, I really like this still. I think this is delicious, and I'm very happy with this pour. I think in a head-to-head battle, C923 would probably win blind. But that would be like a battle of titans, because I think that this is a delicious sip. And if I'm going to give it a score per my scale, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to come in at a nice, well-rounded 8.2. Fantastic, right? I don't give out 9s and above. I think I've only done that like 3 times on the channel. It's not really a thing that we do here. I really try to reserve the 9s and above for whiskeys that just completely rock my world and blow me away and have some great innovation and are executed quite well. So I don't really give those out too often. But I will say that 8.2 is really high praise for me. That's putting it firmly in the fantastic whiskey category. And I think that Elijah Craig Barrel Proof continues to impress, especially with their C batches, which tend to be my preferred batches each year. I don't know why. I don't know if they just are deliberately saving their best juice for the C release. I don't know. But it is very good stuff, and I gotta give high marks for this sip. I like it quite a bit. Thank you so much for tuning into the video today. I appreciate each and every one of you. And if this isn't your first time by the channel and you enjoy your time here, hey, maybe consider hitting the subscribe button, kicking your shoes off, and staying a while. We'd love to meet you. Feel free to swing on over to our Discord and introduce yourself. We got one more night of our virtual bottle share, and then that one's going to be wrapped up. We'll start thinking about the next one and some other events that are on the horizon too. So come say hi. With that, we say cheers, my friends. May you live richly and get better with age. And I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.